Hi everyone. Hope you guys had a good week. Hi Pam. Don't make fun of me after this. Okay, so we'll go ahead and get started for our week 3 discussion. Did you guys read? I know a lot of people said that they were behind, and that's okay because the videos are up forever and ever, amen. So you can catch up anytime you have a chance. Fix my screen real quick. Okay, so this week we started the first 1/3 of part 2, which is Out of Door Life for Children in Charlotte Mason's home education. We're like maybe a quarter of the way through now, so woohoo! Alright, so the topics this week included a growing time, which was kind of like the out of door, getting outside as much as possible, and then sightseeing, picture painting, flowers and trees, and then living creatures. So for a growing time, this is where Charlotte says her famous quote, "Never be indoors when you can rightly be without." And so she encourages us to get our kids outside as much as possible. She says even, "Hi everybody," up to 6 hours a day. I'm waving at everybody. Okay, I missed some waves. Hi. I try to wave at everybody. Okay, so getting our children outside up to 6 hours a day, which I would fail miserably in that department, but we try to get outside a lot. How often do you guys get out? I think we've talked about this before a couple of weeks ago. Such a good and inspiring reading. It was really good, and we're kind of getting into the meat and potatoes of her method, or we're starting, to really dive into her ideas about how to best educate a child at this age. I'm kind of off center. I don't want my phone to fall over either. Okay, so she also talks about having meals outside too, which I love the idea of having meals outside. And our 6-year-old loves to have picnics, and he loves to make picnics, and he'll put together like little fruit bowls and stuff himself and get the blanket and take it outside and make a picnic for us. And I think it was this past year or year before last, that is what he wanted for his birthday, was a picnic. So that's what we did. We had a picnic for his birthday, and that was all he asked for. So it was a lot of fun. We love picnics under our favorite tree. Yes, picnics are just refreshing and fun and kind of take your mind off the busyness of the world. I'm going to turn my blinds up a little because my face is shining. Okay. So I asked you guys this week some ideas for picnics, either your supplies or your foods that you like to have for picnics. And I wrote them all down. Thank you to all of you who responded. I'm trying to make it as interactive as possible. I'm not sure how else to make our discussions interactive, but besides asking you guys questions, but I thought this week I would try the little questions feature on Instagram, and several of you responded, so I appreciate that because it gave me more to talk about here. But your ideas for picnics were simple finger foods like fruits, veggies, olives, mushrooms, the little cubed cheeses, I love those, and then hearty breads, homemade trail mixes, hummus and veggies, bean burger sandwiches. That was from a plant-based mama, is what she said. And then foil packs with potatoes for grilling, which there are like tons. If you look for camping food, there's tons of the foil pack recipes. I've looked up that stuff before because we like to go camping, but those are fun. If you're out for a good while and maybe going camping, that's a good idea. Those foil pack recipes. Let's see, smoothies in mason jars, a baguette with pepper salami and shredded Parmesan cheese. That sounds good. And then for supplies for picnics, I had somebody say lunch boxes, plastic containers, ice packs, reusable water bottles, damp cloths instead of napkins, so you're not having so much waste, and trash bags. Of course, don't forget the trash bags. Reusable straws and then stasher bags, which I was gonna look and see what those are, but I didn't have a chance. So if you know what stasher bags are, you'll have to tell me. It sounds interesting. So those were y'all's ideas for eating meals outside. And bento boxes, I've seen those. I would love to invest in some of those because those are really nice. Hello. Okay, and I love this quote that she said about eating meals outside. She said, 50 years hence, they will see the shadows of the boughs making patterns on the white tablecloth, and sunshine, children's laughter, hum of bees, and scent of flowers are being bottled up for after refreshment. I love her quotes. That was a good one. But it's true. You're also making memories as you have your meals outside. So, she suggests to make it a priority to get outside, even if you live in the city, like me. And she says, perhaps the mother's first duty to her children is to secure for them a quiet growing time, a full 6 years of passive, receptive life, the waking part of it spent for the most part out in the fresh air. Don't send them outside, take them, she says, because sending them isn't enough. There's too much to do and to see and facilitate as moms, and so she says it's not enough to just send them outside. Go out there with them as much as you can. And like I said a minute ago, she suggests 4 to 6 hours between April and October per day, which we live in Texas, and between about May and August, it's about 300 degrees outside. So we don't spend that much time outside, especially during the summer. But especially as the temperatures cool down, we do try to spend more time outside. She says that mothers work wonders once they are convinced that wonders are demanded of them. And I love that quote. I told that one to my mom last week, because I liked it a lot. Stasher bags are silicone Ziploc bags, so they're reusable baggies. Okay, I'll have to look into those because we use Ziplocs a lot. Okay, so moving on from meals outside, unless we have questions about it. Some of these questions we kind of answered last week about where you spend time outside. Some people say they go to the park, or there's a park within walking distance, which is nice. We go to a park. And then, how often do you have meals outside? We try to do it as often as possible, though I'd like to do it more. And then sometimes it's easier to send our children outside than to take them. What suggestions do you have to make it easier for mom to accompany her children outside? So if you have, hi mama. So if you have any suggestions, you can type them up right now. I'm going to move on so that I don't take forever and ever on this video. But I would like your suggestions too about how do you get outside with your kids? Like what spurns you on to go outdoors? Okay, so I like the sections in this chapter about sightseeing and picture painting, because I never thought of these things in the way that she described them. So she says that sightseeing is teaching our children how to see and absorb the world around them. So I think it was this one, or the picture painting. These were kind of like almost one and the same, except one was the observing and the other was discussing. Work together and take them outside, and bring a book for me for some relaxed time also. Yes, that's a good idea. And sit on your little blanket under the tree in the shade and enjoy your book. Let's see, I lost my spot. Okay, so teaching our children how to truly see. We ask them to describe in detail some special place or thing. And we don't allow flat, boring answers that are like, it was cool, We expect from them a full-bodied answer where they describe as much as possible, and they use their very best words to describe it and grow their vocabulary in the process. And she gives an example in her book of a mother sending her children off to go check out the little cottage down the hill and see what's over there and come back and tell me all about it. What do you see? And to them, it's like a game. So it's just fun. They're going to go discover the mystery of the cottage down the hill and see all the things they can and come back and bring it back to Mom and tell her all the wonderful things they saw. And she gives the example of them telling about the plants that they see and the little path down the middle of the garden and the little squirrels or whatever in the garden. I don't remember exactly what she said, but it was a lovely scene to behold. This mother secretively giving a lesson to her children, and they just thought it was a game. So she says that the educational values of sightseeing, you're training their powers of observation and expression. You're increasing their vocabulary and their range of ideas by giving them the name and the uses of an object at the right moment. So by being more aware of their surroundings, she also says that they're more likely as an adult to have vivid memories of their childhood, which most of us, our memories are pretty blurred. Hello. Hi. A lot of people have waved at me. I'm waving back. Okay. Hi. Yes, so most of us have hazy memories of our childhood because we weren't ever taught how to really observe and see the world around us and soak it in. And she says several times in the next several sections of the book that to adults, a lot of these things they're ordinary to us. We're so used to seeing them, we don't pay them much mind anymore. They're old hat. We've seen them a million times. We've seen the sunrise a billion times. It's like old news. But to a child, this is like all of it's new. So she says we have to cultivate that wonder in them and not snuff it out, but encourage them to continue observing and to continue being captivated by these things in nature. I always have lots of outdoor work, gardening, farm work, etc. So we are often outside at the same time. Sometimes working together, sometimes just playing or walking around together. And that's great. I would love to have a garden one day. We go on lots of walks, and my husband is really good about getting us out of the house because I'm really a homebody and I could just live in my cave forever. But he likes to get outside, so he encourages me to get our boys outside. But yes, I think when you're outside with them, it's so much easier for them to be interested in being outdoors. There's some little boys walking down our street. Anyways, okay. So being more aware of their surroundings, it's a discipline that we have to teach our children. And then she uses picture painting as kind of the tool to harnessing that skill of sightseeing. So how do we teach them to really see? This is where she talked about the little cottage where the mom sends them down the hill. The children will delight in this game of picture painting, all the more if the mother introduces it by describing some great picture gallery she has seen. So describing things to them as well, not just expecting them to describe all the things to us. And she goes on to say that though she does not paint her pictures on canvas and have them put in frames, she carries about with her just such a picture gallery. For whenever she sees anything lovely or interesting, she looks at it until she has the picture in her mind's eye, and then she carries it away with her, her own forever, a picture on view just when she wants it. So this was her recommendation for how to get our children involved in the narrating of what they see. We do it first so that they can learn from our example. I have a box garden and my youngest really loves helping. I'd love to have a garden. That's one of my goals in life is to have a garden. And I think that would be a great way for kids to learn too. I don't know what these little boys outside are doing. They're running up and down the street. Sorry, they're distracting me because my window's open. Okay, so moving on to flowers and trees. Or wait, maybe I should ask questions. This one's kind of going fast. Okay, Have you guys used this practice of sightseeing and mental picture painting in your schooling? And if so, what benefits have you seen? I know that my kids weren't super interested in observing nature until, like I was just saying, I became interested and I started naming the trees or the flowers or, picking up acorns, and all of a sudden, well, they wanted to do it too, and they grew their collection. And I do think that discussing those things with them and just answering their questions has grown. Like, I'm thinking of my first grader specifically, because he's the one that's most interested in, because I started when he was youngest in taking part in the nature things and describing, and I think his vocabulary has grown too in that process. So have you guys seen any benefits from that in your schooling? I'd like to know. And then let's see what other questions I can ask you guys and make you talk to me. So there's like this delicate balance between facilitating and then dictating a child's natural learning in nature. So what would be your recommendations for, balancing that and just stepping away whenever they're like in their, zone, and not kind of taking over, which is kind of my tendency, because I want it to be just so. But Charlotte says we need to step back and let them kind of take ownership of their education and allow them to grow in that way on their own. When I am enthusiastic, it seems to be contagious. Yes, I agree. I've seen that too in our schooling as well. Okay, so if you guys can answer those questions I asked if you like. I know it takes a while to type out an answer. Okay, so moving on to, I'm way more excited about nature study and plant identification than my kids. I think maybe I'm too excited. Me too. I know all the trees around here, and I'm like, oh, that's an oak tree. Oh, look, it's a willow tree. Oh, look. And they're like, okay. But it is what it is. And you know what? They'll remember those trees, and they'll be able to identify them. Mine know, magnolia tree and oak tree. They know several trees just because I've told them what they are. So even though we're a little over enthusiastic, that's okay, because it'll rub off. Okay, so moving on to flowers and trees. She says that we should expose our children to fields and crops. And it's our responsibility, even if we live in the city, to expose them to the entire process of planting all the way to harvesting. And we read about that recently in Farmer Boy. We're doing the Playful Pioneers curriculum this year, which is so fun and light, and we're enjoying it a lot. But they talked about the whole process back in the 1800s when they did all this by hand and, broke their backs planting these crops. But it was really interesting. My boys were super interested. And we watched a YouTube video of a horse-drawn plow. And anyway, so it's our responsibility to expose them to these things so that they understand where these things come from. And thinking back on my childhood, we lived in a teeny-weeny little West Texas town of 800 people, and you'd have to go 20, 30 minutes to the nearest city, which wasn't really a very big city, to get groceries and stuff. But on the way there, you'd pass all these fields, crops of, cotton and wheat, and I just remember watching as we drive by, a couple times a week, back and forth, and just seeing the process of these crops being, the big tractor out there, and then, they would water it, and then you see little buds growing from the ground, and then all of a sudden there's these giant, big, the big bales of either cotton or hay out there. So it is interesting for a kid, and I remember that, and we didn't even discuss it. It was just something that we saw all the time, and so they take notice even if we don't sit there and drill it into their head. Okay, so she says that In spring, they should learn local wildflowers. They should be able to describe the leaf, its shape, size, growing from the root or from the stem, the manner of flowering, a head of flowers, a single flower, a spike, etc. She says to make acquaintance with the wildflowers so that they can never forget it or mistake it. They should examine the spot where they find it so that they'll know for the future in what sort of ground to look for such and such a flower. So that's a fun little thing to learn the flowers, because they're only here, so long every year. So they're kind of a passing thing every year. So it'd be fun to learn the wildflowers, and we have really pretty wildflowers here in Texas, and I know they do a lot of work to plant them on the highways. So come spring every year, the sides of the highways are blue with blue bonnets and orange with, I don't know what the orange flowers are, I need to learn it, but yeah, it's really pretty. So Charlotte recommends Anne Pratt's Wildflowers, which I discovered is now free in the public domain online. I looked at some of the pictures, and they're really pretty, and it's just a nice little book. I'd love to have a hard copy of it. But she also says to make friends with the local trees as well, which we talked about, learning their bark, their shape, their leaves, their buds, blossoms, seeds, and observing them throughout the year, and taking note of the change that takes place all year, which is a lovely way of being aware of your surroundings. So I have the biggest, fattest book stack of book recommendations for you guys for this section, because I did have several questions, but also had recommendations too. So these were y'all's recommendations for nature study or field guides. The Country Diary of an Edwardian Lady, Radical Mycology, Mushrooms Demystified, The Sibley Bird Study, Pacific Northwest Medicinal Plants by Scott Clues, Botany in a Day, Exploring Nature with Children, Handbook of Nature Study, the Audubon Regional Field Guides, Google, yes, Google, YouTube as well. I know Alicia Hutchinson has online nature study courses, which seem really interesting. I have the winter one, and it looks like a really fun study. So I don't remember what the studies are called, but it's on Alicia Hutchinson's website. And then, let's see, Megan from Practically Hippie here on Instagram. I know she just opened up a kind of the Nature Pal exchange, but I think Nature Pal exchanges, they're no longer doing their exchanges. So she opened up one that she's calling Nature Buddies. I think you'll have to go to her account to be sure. I'm not sure. But that's where you gather up some nature objects from your local area, nuts and seeds and leaves and locust shells. We find those everywhere. Whatever. You pack them up and you send them to somebody across the country, and then they send you a box. And so you get to see what kind of things are growing and living in their local area, and they see the things that are growing in your local area. And it's just a neat. We did it one time with some nature pals from Alaska, and they sent us some of the neatest stuff, and we still have it on our nature shelf. So that is a really neat opportunity. If you go sign up with Megan at Practically Hippie, you should do that, because it's fun. It's fun for the kids. We got ocean water in ours, and we poured them over the rocks because that was what they wanted us to do, just so we could see what they looked like on the shore. Okay, and then there are a lot of mom resources or mom-made resources on Instagram from moms who are just making. Allison at Tanglewood Hollow, she has tons of stuff. Alice from Twig and Moth, she hand paints stuff. I have a little shop. Let's see who else. Chicky and Rue is making stuff. Fiddlesticks Kids is making stuff. The Little Oak Learning, she has a whole nature curriculum. Homemade Printables also. Forts and Wildflower Shops. All these moms are making all kinds of nature study things. So there's tons and tons of resources out there. So yeah, and then my books. If you need books for nature study, These golden guides are really great for field guides for identifying, your local plants and animals. We have a giant stack of them, and they're called golden guides or golden books. This one's a bird one. And then we have a whole stack of them, and they're little, so they're they travel easily. You can put them in your backpack, and anyways, those are good. We have lots of them. And then, what else? I'm trying to see if I need to share these for this section or the next one, because I had another, hold on guys. Okay, yes, so for this section. Let's see. This coming week we're going to read a little bit about naturalists books, but I thought I'd share some anyway. This is Janet Marsh's Nature Diary, and her illustrations are they're just neat. I like her style of art. Especially like her frogs and toads and mushrooms. They're just fun. So I've had that one for a while just to look through. I haven't read the whole book, but her artwork is really pretty. And then The Country Diary of an Edwardian Lady, and this one is actually nature notes of the Country Diary of an Edwardian Lady, and it actually has spaces inside like a calendar where you can take your own notes for that month. So this book and the original Country Diary book, I think they're a little hard to find because I couldn't even find the original. I ended up getting this one, but this one's neat too, and it has all of her calendar page art in it. So that's one as well. And then, let me see. I don't want to share the books that I have for the next section yet. Okay, so this one is really big. The Handbook of Nature Study. It's a huge book, but it has tons of information in it, and it's divided into lessons, and they're short lessons. It's not like, it seems really overwhelming because it's so big, but the lessons are really short, and there are, let me see how many lessons there are. I just looked, but I already forgot how many there were. 232 lessons, so you could go through this in several years. It could take you several years, but it's just full of information. It's a little pricey. I think it was like $30 on Amazon. Maybe not that much, I'm not sure, but it's also online for free because it's in the public domain. So you can do the free route if you'd like, if that's easier for you. It's just a little harder to navigate that way, and that's why I ended up just going ahead and investing in it. So, The Handbook of Nature Study by Anna Botsford Comstock. Okay, and then somebody already mentioned Exploring Nature with Children, which is a great study, and she actually uses the Handbook of Nature Study as a resource throughout the entire year's worth of lessons. And she just goes through the entire year. There's 4 weeks per month of studies, and she gives, craft ideas or nature walk ideas. And can I see the size of print on the big one? The black one, I'm assuming. Let's see. It's not just tiny, but it's not large either. And it's backwards on my camera, but okay. So, I don't know, might need a lens or something to see it with, a magnifying glass. No, it's not that small, I don't think. Okay. So, yes, Exploring Nature with Children. We're using this year. I haven't been able to keep up with every week because we've just been so busy the past couple of months. But whenever we have a slow week, and once football season is over, we'll definitely be digging into that more. And then also, there are these take-along guides. I told you I had a ton of books to show you. The take-along guides, which are, they're little books and they're just for kids, and they have pretty pictures in them, and they're just fun. I mean, they're short and sweet. They get to the point, but they have lots of information. And we have a ton of these as well, with wildflowers, and then I brought up birds' nests and eggs, trees, leaves, and bark, and they have, you know, seashells, and they have all kinds of them. So those are an option too. Those would be good, especially if you have littler people. Okay, and okay, I'll show you this one too. Natural science throughout the seasons. This is a neat one. It has, I mean, it just kind of similar to exploring nature with children, but it has lessons for every season of the year. Tons and tons of lessons, so you could pick and choose. Let me see if I can find a good. It has pretty illustrations, like showing how to do their experiment ideas, and it's a really neat resource, and I'd like to use it a little more than I have, but yeah. So that's a good one. I'll show the cover one more time. Natural Science Through the Seasons. And sorry that it's backwards, but okay, so that was all for my nature study resources. Okay, so she says, why are we teaching our children these things about nature and encouraging them to get out in the living world? She says, because they, like I mentioned earlier, they marvel at these things and they're naturally curious about them. She quoted someone, this is a quote from somebody else, I didn't write it down right here, but she said, "The flowers, it's true, are not new, but the children are. And it's the fault of their elders if every new flower they come upon is not to them a piccola, a mystery of beauty to be watched from day to day with unspeakable awe and delight." And I had to Google what piccola means because I had no idea. But apparently it was a book written a long time ago about a man who's wrongfully imprisoned, and as he sits in his prison cell, this little plant starts growing in his cell, but it like becomes his, like the one thing he's living for, because it's showing life in a place that's like a dungeon. And so he like tends to this little plant and it grows into this big beautiful something or other. But she says there's no reason our children shouldn't feel this way about every living thing that they see, because they're wired this way, to be curious about the world around them. And it's only because of us that they lose that curiosity and they're no longer interested, because to us it's ordinary, like I said before. She says all this is stale knowledge to older people, but one of the secrets of the educator is to present nothing as stale knowledge, but to put himself in the position of the child and wonder and admire with him. For every common miracle which the child sees with his own eyes makes of him, for the moment, another Newton. So he's learning in the process while he's admiring and being captivated by these things. Then she goes on to talk about recording their nature findings, or what they're finding out in nature on these nature walks or just their outdoor time. And she recommends a calendar, and that they should keep record of all the new things for every season. So they'd want to record the first blossom that they see, or the first leaf bud on a tree, like the day that they saw it that year, the first seed falling from the tree, or taking note of where they found it as well. And then next year, as they add to this calendar that she would hope they keep yearly, they can add to it, and then they also know what to expect every year. And then she also says that nature journaling should be started as young as possible, even if we, their mom, have to write for them in their nature journal, even just a little, little one sentence, what they say it is. We can write it for them, and then they draw the picture of whatever they've found. Every day's walk gives him something to enter. 3 squirrels in a larch tree, a jay flying across such a field, a caterpillar climbing up a nettle, a snail eating a cabbage leaf, a spider dropping suddenly to the ground where he found ground ivy, how it was growing and what plants were growing with it, how bindweed or ivy manages to climb. So the possibilities are endless, is pretty much what she's saying. And she warns us that it's not our job to dictate what they put in their journal. It's only our job to facilitate, get them outside, and put these things before them, and then step out of the way, and only assist on the things like the writing portion if we need to. So it's really their nature journal, and not something that we take over, which I struggle with. But this is what she recommends, and I understand why she does, because they need to become, independent thinkers and have their own thoughts and not just what Mama tells them to say. Okay. And she states that nature itself gives the mind of a child so much to grind on, because she quoted a poem that said the human brain is like a millstone, turning ever round and round. If it have nothing else to grind, it must itself be ground. So we constantly want to be feeding their little brains with good things and curiosities and just exploration. Because otherwise, like we talked about last week, people who don't put their brain to use become eccentric, is what the word that she used. Okay, so resources for nature journaling. You guys, I had one answer on this question for whenever I asked you guys, and it was the Naturalist's Notebook, which I didn't have time to look up what that was, but I'm going to look into it. The person that sent the answer said that there is a 3-year calendar in the back. So for those of you who are interested in the calendar of firsts, that's an option. Then I also know Alice from Twig and Moth, she sells a really pretty nature journal. It's just really beautiful, and you can find those on her Etsy shop. I've seen several people with them. They look really fun. Thinking Tree journals, I looked to see if they have an actual nature journal. I couldn't find one, but they have tons and tons of homeschool type journals, so that is an option. Their website is funschoolingbooks.com. Or you can do like we do, and I just buy my boys a blank notebook, colored pencils, art supplies if you like to paint or whatever. And that's how we do it. We start with just a blank journal and kind of add a picture here and there throughout the year. We've never just filled up a whole notebook, but we try to add pictures as we can. And then also for the calendar at first, you could just do a blank calendar. Just buy a blank calendar, or just print a blank calendar and then just let them record, the firsts of all the things that they see that year, which is a fun habit, I think. Moving on to living creatures. Charlotte says that children can only learn about the living world if they're out in it. And she gave an example of a classroom full of students who were so bored by this lesson about bees, and come to find out, none of them had ever seen a bee. So why would you be interested in bees if you've never even seen one? So she says it's our responsibility to get our kids outside and exploring in nature. She recommends things like ant farms, a butterfly habitat, a ladybug habitat. Those are all things you could find on Amazon, or you can make your own. I don't know about you guys, but here it's really moist all the time, and you always find like the teeny weeniest baby snails. And we once created a habitat for them. We scooped up some dirt that was like covered with moss, and we put these little baby snails in there and some roly-polies, and they lived for a long time. And we finally let them go, but my boys loved that. So you can make these habitats too. You don't have to go buy them. And all of these things are more things to enter in their nature journal. Let all that he finds out about be entered into his diary, by his mother if writing be a labor to him. where he finds it, what it's doing or seems to him to be doing, its color, shape, legs. Someday he will come across the name of the creature and will recognize the description of an old friend. I love that. So they're making connections and sweet memories at the same time. And then she warns us too about don't snuff out their interests by being afraid of little critters. I'm afraid of spiders. That probably won't ever change, but she says don't scream and squirm over something they bring to you, because all of a sudden to them it has a negative, connotation, and they're never going to deal with it again because of our reaction. So she said try your best to encourage that curiosity and not discourage it by being creeped out, which is hard. But she gave, I haven't been asking you guys the questions. I'm sorry, I've been so caught up in talking. She gave John James Audubon as an example, and he's the wildlife artist who has painted like the bazillion birds in the 1800s, I think. But she quoted him on this section when he said, "When I had hardly learned to walk and to articulate those first words always so endearing to parents, the productions of nature that lay spread all around were constantly pointed out to me. My father generally accompanied my steps, procured birds and flowers for me, and pointed out the elegant movements of the former, the beauty and softness of their plumage, the manifestations of their pleasure or their sense of danger, and the always perfect forms and splendid attire of the latter, the flowers. He would speak of the departure and return of the birds with the season, describe their haunts, and more wonderful than all, their change of livery, thus exciting me to study them and to raise my mind towards their great Creator." Which I love that. All because his father encouraged him to be curious about these things, and now he's hundreds of years later, a household name and has these giant organizations named after him. And so you just never know what you're cultivating in your home whenever you encourage curiosity in the natural world. She says we mustn't force feed them secondhand information, like the study of the bee without ever seeing a bee. They're bored, they're not interested because they have no idea what you're talking about. We have to get them out in the world so that they can take ownership of their education themselves and be curious naturally, because they are already. We don't have to make them curious. They already are. Thank you. I needed that because I felt like, oh my gosh, Ashley, you're babbling. One of our favorite books is The Boy Who Drew Birds by John James Audubon. Ooh, I need to look into that one. By Jacqueline Davies. I'm going to write that down real quick. The Boy Who Drew Birds. Thank you. Okay, I wrote that down because that one sounds really good. So I'm going to look into that one. Okay, so let me see where I ended my babble. Okay, so like I said, we don't feed them second-hand information. We get them out into the world, and that's pretty much what she's trying to say for the whole first section that we read this past week. Get them into the world. Let nature be their teacher. She says, once we accept nature as a child's greatest first teacher, we open the floodgates for a lifetime of curiosity and learning for our children. And this is also one of her favorite quotes right here. She says, we were all meant to be naturalists, each in his degree, and it's inexcusable to live in a world so full of the marvels of plant and animal life and to care for none of these things. So true. And I didn't grow up super curious in nature, but now that I'm educating my kids, I want them to be curious about it and to awe and wonder at it and be amazed by it, because it is amazing. There's so much buzzing around us all the time, and we just too often, I think, are distracted and don't pay it any mind because we're just used to it. But really, there's so much going on all the time, and there's so much to see and learn. And so as the last kind of push at the end of this section, she said, we have to consider, I mean, not just the beauty of this type of learning, but consider all the other wonderful habits that are formed by allowing our children to learn in this way and to observe and interact with nature. And she listed a few: attention, they're growing their attention spans, discernment, patience, growth, all kinds of things that they're creating habits of just by being aware of nature, being in nature, and taking account of it and owning it and making it their own. And she says that these types of habits that are like a not accidental result, but like a second result of this type of learning, it'll prepare a child for anything in their life later. And then lastly, she says, don't forget the girls, because I guess at the time, boys were probably more educated than girls, but she was pushing that girls need to learn these things too. And she says, with whom but the girls must it rest to mold the generations yet to be born. Amen, Charlotte Mason. So she drove it home with that last little section. I don't teach any girls because I have all boys, but you girl mamas, you go, because the future lays in their hands too, not just the boys. Okay, so let me see if I missed questions because I got to talking. Okay, so have any of you guys ever used a calendar of firsts or a nature journal? And then I asked you for any resources if you had any ideas. You guys are welcome to chime in whenever. And then, let's see. If it comes easily for you to be out in nature, do share your tips, because for some people it's not as easy. Like for me, I could be home all the time and not ever complain. But like I mentioned earlier, my husband likes to get out, so we do go a lot. And then, are there any critters that creep you out, like spiders or snakes? And have you been able to not be disgusted by it so that your kids don't lose interest? Okay, so I don't know if anybody's typing answers. I guess I could go ahead and do my little conclusion, and if anybody pops up with an answer, I'll read it. And okay, so that was all of our reading. This section was really good. I feel like we're finally like dipping our toes into her methodology and like getting to the good stuff. If you would like to join me in this chat, you just let me know, because I would love to speak to somebody face to face if you're interested. I'll try to have next week's discussion questions up either tomorrow or Tuesday. I was kind of late this past week because we were just super busy. But I'm going to try to finish them today so I can get them up tomorrow. But if not, they'll be up Tuesday. And then also I wanted to ask you guys, if you prefer my summary that I post on my blog, if you read it, do you prefer it on Fridays when I post it, or would you rather have it earlier in the week? Because I'm not sure which day to post it on. Y'all just let me know which day is best for you. I'm not scared of any critters, but I think that learning more about them helps to change your feelings about them. That's true too. Whenever you understand like what role they play in the whole ecosystem of your environment, that totally changes your perspective about them and makes it not so creepy. Learning about them helps me be more curious. Yes, me too. Hello everyone that's joining now. We're almost done, but it'll be up live still later. I'm waving to everyone that came in later. Okay. Well, that was all of my notes, and I don't know if anybody's still typing, but I guess I'll let you all go. And I thank you all, 10 of you that are here right now listening, because if you guys weren't here every week, I would literally be talking to an empty room. Oh, good. Yay. I'm glad. I hope that these are helpful. I don't know if they're being helpful. I've had some people say they are, but I'm just talking a lot and I'm doing my best. I hope they're somewhat helpful to you guys. Okay. Well, I will let you guys go. Y'all have a great week, and I will see you next Sunday. Bye, guys.